Well, good afternoon, Dana. Lovely to be here in your offices overlooking the bay. And we've had, it seems like 4 seasons in one day today. But thanks for joining. And I'd love to sort of hear a little bit about your background for everybody else before we dive in.
Sure. Born and raised in the Bay Area. Have about 30 years working in tech at a handful of tech companies. The last 15 years, I've been a general partner here at Matrix, early stage venture firm. We selectively back founders who, typically have ideas and at that stage, and work closely with them over, what turns out to usually be 5 to 10 years, helping build big category lean companies when we can.
Fantastic. And if you think back from all that wonderful experience and you think of high performance, what's the sort of one example or one person who sort of really delivered an incredible high performance output?
I think a more recent one is relevant and interesting, which is a common friend we have, which is Nick Molnar, who is the founder of Afterpay.
Yeah,
one of the two founders.
What was it about him that springs to mind?
I think that the period of time where I think the company executed really well, and where Nick really did a standout job was in that transition of moving from being an Australia only business. The company's founded in Sydney, Australia. A few years in, after some early success in Australia, came to the U.S. market, and we needed to build a team. We knew this was going to be a more competitive market. We needed to build a team of senior leadership, in some cases that have global responsibilities, in some cases had just U.S. responsibilities, but who could then build their functional teams underneath them.
Yeah. And
we could execute it as quickly as possible to enter this market as quietly as possible as we could, because we knew this would be so competitive here.
Definitely. And what was it about Nick that enabled that to actually happen and come to fruition?
Yeah, look, different founders have different superpowers for sure. Nick's superpower, without question, is his charisma, his likability, his ability to garner trust with people and to have them want to have his back as a leader in an organization. It's something he just he innately has.
You do that. What is it? What is the thing that we can?
Because I do this because it's not something that I feel like I couldn't watch Nick and decide I want to have that charisma too and have it, right? It's something he's born with, as well as something he's honed over the years. But in this particular case, he was, we introduced a lot of the best leaders we had from the Matrix network, many of who were embedded in roles at other companies outside of our portfolio that we thought would be great hires, great leaders in this organization. And, we spent several months building that kind of core leadership team to get started. And the strategy was very clear. In this particular case, it doesn't usually this work from a 0-1 startup. But as we moved to the U.S. and we already had a leadership team in Australia, we knew we wanted to hire senior leaders here who we could then empower to build the teams underneath them while we entered the market and sprinted.
And so really building the planes that they are flying.
Yeah. So.
And as you saw Nick in action with building that team, and what did you notice as that sort of dynamic across the table from Nick's side, but also their side?
Yeah, look, I think recruiting is selling in a lot of respects, right? You're selling a dream. You're selling what's going to be like to work with me as a leader. Do you trust me? Do you believe me? Are you willing to walk away from, in some cases, millions of dollars of stock options or, current compensation to come to the startup with a promise of making money in the long term if it works? So that's a big sales job, and he was exceptional at it.
Definitely.
And I think it also worked out for all of them in the end.
He did all right.
Yeah.
And obviously building that team and bringing that team together is the first part. But what made that team go on to perform at the level that they did?
Yeah. So look, this was a business that in the U.S. market, I think we went from 0 to 100 million run rate in 12 months.
Wow.
From a standing start, including kind of building this team in the early part of that phase. I fundamentally believe that strategy is more important than execution. And I've actually debated this with CEOs before, whether in fact it's true or not. But I truly believe mediocre execution of the right strategy is more important than perfect execution of a slightly wrong strategy.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that multiple times in my career. I experienced that at PayPal. I experienced that at eBay. I experienced that earlier in my career at Netscape. And we captured that at Afterpay. And the success in this market was about clarity of that strategy. It was largely informed about what worked in the first couple of years of the company's life in Australia. But it was also like, how do we need to reswizzle that strategy for this market and the different dynamics that we had here? We had more capital, but we had more competition. So Nick and his co-founder, Anthony Eisen, did an amazing job of crystallizing that strategy in a very easy to understand way. Every single person in that company knew exactly what needed to be done this particular month, this particular quarter, what the goals were this year. And it was simply articulated. It wasn't a, 30-page deck with 4 priority bullet points, but the 4 priority bullet points actually incorporate everything you could possibly ever want to do. Like, it was very consistent. Like, we need 5 referenceable enterprise accounts.
Yeah.
We need an inside sales team that can convert SMB retailers at a particular rate.
Yeah.
And I think it's that clarity that is at the essence of great execution.
So we've got that charisma of the leader, we've got the team that he'd able to assemble, and then the clarity of the strategy and the execution on that. So it's sort of an end-to-end piece.
That's right.
So companies and other founders and leaders of teams out there who are struggling, what's the one piece of advice you would give them in order for them to taste the same levels of success as Nick and Ant at Afterpay?
I would probably, of those particular points, I mean, look, team is always important, so you can't undersell that. But I guess what I would impart is the importance of a clear strategy.
Okay.
And the communication of that in a really simple way.
And what I hear in that is about repeating that every opportunity.
And repeating it. And I mean, if I go back even earlier in my career, there were just little hacks we used. Like, so we would actually do a lot of strategy work as a leadership team. We would boil it down. We'd communicate it to the employees. We'd actually use some of that those are the same slides that we would use for our board meeting.
Yeah.
At the same. And then as we go and have check-in meetings, we'd selectively pull some of those slides to re-articulate and reinforce those points over and over and over at quarterly business reviews or at all-hand meetings throughout the year.
So they kept seeing it.
Over and over, consistently.
Fantastic. Yeah. And as you look forward, sort of what's going on in the world right now and what you're doing here at Matrix, what are you seeing as the flavor of what's going to be happening in the next year?
Well, it's 2025. The flavor of du jour is artificial intelligence, without question. So I think pure AI accounts for at least 50% of the new investments we're making. The other 50% are all influenced by AI if they're not solidly AI at their core.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Dana, and look forward to seeing you be ever more successful this year.
Thank you, Jez.
Thanks a lot. Bye. So as we just heard from Dana there, make sure you've got your team in place as the fundamental. Get a clear strategy and make sure you can execute on that time and time again and be clear in its communication. Remember, be better, do better, demand better. Let's go.